Battle Boy Destroyed Troy, Chapter 2. The Tome Tower buzzed like an engine room. Napoleon looked at the shelves lining the walls and the battle books. He reached up to one that was shaking and rattling and whistling like a kettle. "Steady, baby." Napoleon knew how unstable the battle books were in Delta phase. One false move and they could explode. There would be no library left if that happened, just a hole in the ground. A very big hole. He lifted the book down carefully and placed it on the floor in the middle of the chamber. It was rumbling and getting hotter and hotter. Smoke leaked from a crack in the side. "Better open it," the professor said. "That crack looks dangerous." Napoleon leaned down and undid the catch that held the casket shut. It burned his fingers. The cover burst open at once. A mighty roar filled the chamber, and a column of white light shot into the air. Napoleon knew what he had to do next. He took a deep breath, ran forward, and threw himself into the beam of light. He vanished in an instant. It always took his breath away, being sucked back through time and space. And the further he had to go, the faster he went. This time he was heading back more than 3,000 years, so he was rocketing at an enormous speed. He shut his eyes tight against the noise and wind, and then, suddenly, it was all over. He was tumbling down a set of steep steps, bump, bump, bump. At the bottom, he rammed into a wall. Splat! He lay there for a while, rubbing his head. "Oh, Skin," he said, "we really need to work on these landings." "Affirmative, BB," said Skin. "Bruising to head and shoulders detected." "You don't need to tell me," said Napoleon. "I can feel them." He looked up at the city wall. Trojan warriors lined up the sides with their weapons drawn. Fireballs hung in mid-flight like shooting stars. He climbed some stairs for a better view. Greek soldiers were everywhere, hurling their spears, climbing up the walls, or charging across the plain towards Troy. There were hundreds of ships in the bay. They must be Greek ships, thought Napoleon. This was the most enormous battle he had ever seen. But nobody was moving. Everything was still and silent. The battle book was in Epsilon phase. Duration of Epsilon phase uncertain, BB Skin reminded him. Napoleon sprang to his feet. Epsilon phase can last from only a few seconds to many minutes. Epsilon phase was the best time for collecting data, a time of total stillness while the battle book adjusted to his presence. It felt odd moving through the battle scene. It was as if he was part of a movie, but someone had hit the pause button. He ducked beneath drawn swords and felt the tips of whizzing arrows. He eyeballed a particularly fierce-looking soldier. "Take that and that," he said, karate chopping the air. He looked out over everything and slowly scanned the scene with Skin's many eyes. "Excellent images," said Skin, who was storing the data as pictures and movies. Napoleon focused on several soldiers, and Skin zoomed in. He picked out a set of body armour and a couple of helmets with bright horsehair plumes. Then a huge body shield caught his eye. Battle Boy becomes part of the action during Kappa phase. 10 seconds until Kappa phase, warned Skin. 9, 8, 7. Napoleon touched several warriors quickly to collect their DNA. Then he looked for somewhere to hide. 5, 4. But he was out in the open. There was nowhere to hide. 3. He crouched down and covered his head with his hands. If he couldn't see anyone, maybe they couldn't see him either. 2, 1. Kappa phase activated, announced Skin. Napoleon knew what was coming next. He pulled his head even tighter.